MAC addresses. So MAC stands for Media Access Controllers. An example of one is 00, 00, 0C, 01, 25, 21. They contain 7 octets. And how can the manufacturer be determined from the MAC address above? We talked about this earlier. The first 6 characters, or octets, describe, well, it's the first 3 octets, describe the manufacturer. So vendor lookup sites are plentiful, MAC vendor lookup, or you can just Google the first 6 with the colons in between and you'll get it. A flood of MAC addresses sent to a smart switch will turn it into a hub when the memory buffers are overrun. We talked about this earlier and we gave some examples. MAC address, continued here. Cisco set of MAC address examples, 00, 00, 0C. This is the first 3 octets of the address, or the first half of the address is Cisco Systems Inc. And then they also have 00, 01, 42, 43, and so on and so forth. So they pay big money to manage these. IPv4 addressing, we talked about this a little bit in not so much detail earlier when we talked about CIDR notation. IPv4 exhaustion occurred in August 2015. IPv4 addresses look like 3 letters, dot 3 letters, dot 3 letters, dot 3 letters. Sometimes you need to put all 3 in there, so it's 204.035.022.195. They're non-routable address private networks that are designated, so if the internet router sees 10.0.0.1, they'll drop the packet. That's the range that's non-routable there. So they also have the 172 network and the 192 network. So it's 10.0.0.0 all the way through 10.255. So there's your CIDR notation on the right and the number of addresses in the middle. IPv6 addressing, theoretically speaking, should never be exhausted. Many security issues are being discovered with IPv6. It's getting worse and worse as it comes online. More and more people are digging into it. Noob network engineers will see IPv6 the first day on the job. So when you get a network engineering job in the last 3 years, you may not ever see IPv6, but today you will see it from day one, so you need to understand it. Be sure to understand the strengths and weaknesses of IPv6. There are some non-routable IPv6 addresses, so you can use them on a LAN. So you have the FD prefix, and those are your non-routable range there. So stateless addresses, auto configuration. So stateless address auto configuration, SLAC. Auto address configuration via neighbor discovery protocol. Zeros may be omitted in address notation. These are just a couple of features about IPv6 addressing. So zeros may be omitted in address notation. So for example, 24, 42, 55, 55, colon, 02 equals the same as that on the right. So you can see where the zeros are. When you see colons together, in between, they're just zeros. So if you have an address that starts with FD and an IPv6, where that 24 is on the bottom there, that's an example of a non-routable address. If a router sees that, it'll drop the packet. Social engineering. Tricking someone into providing information they would never otherwise provide. So social engineering versus reverse engineering versus an attack. It is an attack, but it's an attack on the people, not so much the networking or the hardware. And then it involves fake emails that appear to be from your supervisor's boss or manager. It's a legit email. Well, it's not a legitimate email, but it's an email that's been spoofed to make it look legitimate. From a supervisor, a boss, or a manager. Those work very well. Hi, I'm from your bank. I need your account info. Your bank's constantly warned you over the last few years not to do this. You see these emails from Africa all the time. Help us convert this money. Somebody died, etc., etc. Hi, I'm from the SEC. I need your computer immediately. In other words, this is a position of authority attack. So an example of this, you're on a pen test for an organization, say a bank. Today you have to be specifically qualified to do these, so it's not likely that most people would do this. A very small group of people that do them today. called, you need a QSA certification to do it. For the larger banks. For the smaller banks like credit unions and things like that, you don't need the QSA certification. So say you're going to a bank and you're going to do a pen test, and you can walk in a suit, you walk right up to the guy's desk, you slam your computer down like you're having a bad day and say, look, I need your terminal for a few minutes. I'm from the SEC and I'm here to do an audit. And they'll usually slide right over, and you can say, look, I need you to log in for me. They'll log in and let you do whatever you want to do. So sometimes that works. People are catching on to it these days, but it works quite a few times. Heard many stories about it working. So simply getting someone to do something they would not otherwise do is a social engineering attack. Useful in determining which users need end-user training. That's a test question. Which type of attack is useful in determining which users need end-user training. In other words, they need to be trained not to fall for this kind of thing. So a social engineering attack would be the answer there. Spam mitigation, stop the email from reaching the end user. So this is how you can prevent social engineering, by spam mitigation. So you catch it at the gateway before it ever reaches the LAN. So they never even see it. So it doesn't matter if they're trained to know what fake email looks like. So I do this a lot for companies. Look at email they have, and they'll send them to you and say, hey, I don't know if this is legitimate or not. About 50% of the time they're legitimate, 50% of the time they're not legitimate, and that's perfectly fine for them to be super paranoid. That's a good sign. Another type of attack, dumpster diving. This is a passive attack. Even though you're physically diving into their trash, you're not in their office, it's out on the street or out in a dumpster somewhere. You're not physically in their office space, so it's considered a passive attack. When someone literally dives into a dumpster of a Target and starts digging in their trash, that's not Target as in the company, it's as in the target of what you're trying to gather information for. You might find passwords in there, default passwords they may use, so even though this particular guy changed his password, the next one may not have yet. So if you can find a new user, look for the parking lot, look for a guy that's come in there, see if you can see something in his window that might give you his name, and you can start guessing and seeing what his default password might be. The mitigation technique, use of cross-cut shredding services, recurring security awareness training. So you can have the physical security guards out there knowing what to look for in the trash. Secure the dumpster might be another method. And then also training your end users not to throw trash away.